Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, as the case might be. Welcome or welcome back. Again, as the case might be, my name is Dalibor Petrovic. I'm a partner at Deloitte, and I will be your host in this conversation today. Today's episode 4, actually, in our Cresting the Cloud Horizon series. And in the previous sessions, of course, we touched on a number of important cloud-related topics, from FinOps, to creating value from cloud. But today, in our 4th and final episode, we're going to talk about cloud operating models and how these cloud operating models create essentially a blueprint to help accelerate your cloud transformation and your other types of technology transformations. This is a live session, so if you have any questions or comments, please join the conversation by submitting your questions using the Q&A function of this platform. And to help us unpack this topic, I am thrilled and honored to have 2 special guests joining me today. First, I'd like to introduce Mackenzie Jackson. Mackenzie is a cloud transformation leader at Deloitte. A colleague of mine. We worked together for many, many years. It's wonderful to see you, Mac, join us for this conversation. Mac, before we start, maybe if you don't mind me poking you for a quick intro, maybe a bit of a bio and what you do at Deloitte.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Dalibor. And as you say, it's great to connect with you and chat with you here on this format. We've been colleagues for a long time now, and it's great to chat with you. So my name's Mackenzie, or Mac Jackson. I'm a cloud transformation leader, and I'm also our national leader for our cloud operating model methodology here at Deloitte Canada. I've been working at Deloitte now for 12 years this month, actually. And throughout that time, I've been working with organizations on their cloud operating model and their cloud strategy in general, starting with cloud readiness to general cloud strategy, and more recently to helping organizations really focus on their cloud operating models and helping organizations through at various different stages of their cloud journey, whether they're starting their very first pilot and proof of concept, or already have multiple hyperscaler deployments within the cloud-based environment, to look at how they run and operate cloud within the context of their IT organization and become more efficient and effective at doing so. So I'm really eager to talk about that, to share some of the stories I've seen today, and to have this conversation with both yourself and with Craig on this webcast today. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
So clearly you are the right guy for this topic.
Yeah.
We have another right guy for the topic. I'm thrilled to welcome Craig Ozubko to the conversation. Hi, Craig. Craig is the cloud and hosting leader at BCLC, British Columbia Lottery Corporation. So, Craig, you are right in the weeds. You are the doer of these things. Thank you very much for your time. I would love to give you also a chance to briefly introduce yourself to our audience.
Sure. Well, first off, thanks very much for the opportunity to be here with you today and to talk to some of your customers and people that have attended the session. As Dalibor has said, my name is Craig Ozubko, and I do work at BCLC. And like Mackenzie, I've been around this organization for quite some time. As we've gone into the cloud model for hosting on our data centers and now with our hyperscalers, I've been, I think, labeled as nut number 3 within the organization around cloud and cloud transformation, and accepting it as a part of our delivery stream. And so I lead the hosting pieces at BCLC, so our data centers, and I also have a number of teams that directly report to me around building out our cloud infrastructure and platforms. For us at BCLC, that is Amazon Web Services and Microsoft Azure.
Very much looking forward to hearing what you're going to have to say about this, because this will come from very much first-hand experience. So let's start from the very top. When we say cloud operating model, Mackenzie, what do we mean by cloud operating model? And more specifically, why are organizations defining cloud operating models specifically within sort of more broader IT operating model concept?
Yeah, absolutely. So in my view, and in the way that I talk with my clients, a cloud operating model is simple. It's looking at not only the technology pieces, but also the people, i.e. roles, skill sets, capabilities, and the processes, governance, decision-making rights, and flows that in together as a three-part stool make up the ability for the organizations to effectively run and operate their cloud investments to gain value, to be efficient, to be secure, etc. So it's taking a look at the resources that you have available within your IT organization and saying, are these sufficient to gain the maximum value from my cloud investment? And it's not necessarily, and usually isn't, a totally separate operating model or framework to traditional IT. What it is adding in layers to the way that you do your typical IT and run your typical IT business to make sure that it accounts for the special properties of a pay-per-use rented leased capability that comes into your environment. So a case in point would be a new request for technology comes into the IT organization, and you evaluate that piece of technology for whether it's a fit for a cloud-based model in general. And if so, what type of cloud-based model it might be best fit for, whether that's software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, public, hybrid, private. And when you do that evaluation, you have the right people who understand cloud and the relative pros and cons of each of those things. You have them having the right decision-making framework and even process to do that evaluation. But it doesn't take away from that process being distinct for everything, not just cloud, right? So that intake process is consistent for IT for any technology need, but there's a special capability within there of cloud skill sets and knowledge that's needed in order to fulfill that intake process and deliver that demand back to the business customer. So that's really what it's about.
And if you were to think about when would be the right time for organizations to start thinking about designing a specific cloud operating model within their broader IT operating model, what would be your sort of reaction or advice?
No. I think there's no right or wrong time to start thinking about your cloud operations and the most effective way to deliver on that. So I've worked with organizations who are, again, starting their very first pilot workload in cloud and thinking, do we even have the knowledge and skill sets to make sure that what we deploy within that cloud environment is secure, operated, and managed effectively? I've also worked with organizations that had an operating model. They actually got to a point where they had multiple cloud solutions, various SaaS solutions and 2 different hyperscalers. And they realized that there's a lot of overlap in how they're managing those individual products, that they could gain economies of scale from thinking about a consolidated way of viewing these products. So they looked at their operating model and redefined it and optimized it for where they were in their cloud journey. And I think that's one of the most important points, is that the cloud operating model is not a once and done static delivery. It's an ever evolving capability set that's based on where you are and what you have in cloud and where you want to go and what you want to achieve with cloud value outcomes. It's therefore very strictly tied to your cloud strategy. What are the values and capabilities and benefits you want to get from cloud, which is tied to overall IT strategy, which should be overall tied to the organization's business strategy. So again, going back to that point, it's not something that's separate and distinct. It's an integral part of delivering on what the organization wants to achieve through the use of technology.
So if we imagine the traditional IT operating model is intended to provide, stability and capabilities that are well defined for a stable, reliable, predictive operation of an IT department. Cloud operating model, the way I'm sort of translating what you're saying, is intended to provide a structure that is specifically focused on leveraging the best of cloud. And that means, I would assume, agility, agility while providing security, ability to be elastic on the demand, scale up, scale down, and to provide that consistently across multiple different cloud platforms that we know most organizations now have, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, one of the most important benefits of leveraging cloud technologies is the ability to very quickly stand up new technology capabilities and deploy new solutions for business customers. And as you say, not only deploy them quickly, but test and iterate and evolve and evolve it. And that's very anathema to how traditional IT is delivered. It's
Yeah.
looked at as a long-term stable capital investment,
Yeah.
whereas cloud is an innovative and agile and ever-changing consumption models that are complex, pricing that you only really know once it's in production how much usage you're going to have. This causes a lot of headache for traditional IT leaders that are wanting that stability and function. So a cloud operating model is, do we have the right oversight and control and knowledge and skill set to allow for this innovation to drive the value we're looking for without it quickly spiraling out of control and being something that's unmanageable and puts us at great risk, both of financially and even from a cyber perspective. So that's really what it's about.
So if you were to contrast the difference between organizations who successfully manage to leverage cloud and those that are struggling, what would you say would be the biggest differences? And how much of a role does cloud operating model have in solving those issues?
Yeah, I think the cloud operating model is, I wouldn't say it's the only thing you need to be successful in delivering on these technology pieces, right? It's one way to view it. But one of the things that keeps me coming back to cloud operating models is that it's a catalyst for change in general to an IT organization to move to that more agile, product-centered versus project-centered type of capability set. And cloud as a technology, and again, this is why I've been working in it for 12 years and I'm very passionate about it, is due to its pay-per-use model, the fact that you need to address it efficiently, understand what each piece of technology is being used for and how it's going to deliver value. It requires an organization to reevaluate itself from that, kind of traditional cost center stability type organization to one that promotes and strategically works with the business to enable innovation and have oversight and control over the assets that are deployed in multiple different locations. So I think the op model is a critical piece of that by having the right skill sets and roles, but it's a broader skill set that is required around the cloud operating model to achieve those outcomes and capabilities.
That's very, very good. So Craig, of course, you're here because we know you and your organizations have successfully designed and deployed an operating model. I would like to know, what were your primary drivers in adopting the IT operating model for the cloud? When did your organization start considering the need to make such changes, and what did it look like?
Yeah, great question. And I think I can really complement a lot of Mackenzie's statements there around the operating model itself. So, for BCLC and our journey, it didn't just start yesterday. It's not like we just invested yesterday. For us, it actually started in 2016. So, Mackenzie was referencing, being able to do some proof of concept or proof of value pieces, right, with a small scope. That's where we started as well. We identified a number of different workloads where we felt we could gain some value and insight around automation, around cloud, and other development type and delivery models, and that's where we started. And that quickly became a divisional pillar within our organization a couple of years later, and soon after followed by having a dedicated team that was going to take a look at the previous work and see how we could push it even further. So, I just want to, I think, iterate that it's an iterative approach, and we've taken that iterative approach and we pivot where we need to, and we invest heavier where we feel that that's going, right? So when you look at the primary drivers for us as an IT organization, it's really being a strategic enabler and partner. So we don't want to just focus on end-to-end technology solutions. We actually want to have a partner with the business to just make sure that we're alongside and seen as a good strategic partner to align on the business outcomes that we're trying to achieve through our opportunities and what we've learned. And the second one for us is definitely, Mackenzie, you referenced this as well, as being able to deliver robust and scalable services with speed and agility. And for us, that comes with a compliant and security enabled solution. We want to be able to cover all of our bases when we take a look at that and provide our customers that self-service and consumable catalog of items that they can, on their own, without any technical knowledge, continue to consume. And then finally, just on that driver is the piece around innovation, right? Traditional IT, you go through your procurement, you bring it in, and you and you hope that it meets the needs that you're looking for. With cloud, to Mackenzie's point, is we can quickly light up those services, test and validate whether those are good or not, and whether we're going to invest or divest from that that product or product suite within our lines of products that we offer to our customers. And then finally, you know, another one of our key ones is optimizing our operating costs, right? So we're a public sector entity. Our stakeholders are, you know, the residents of British Columbia. And so when we take a look at those solutions, we also want to have the transparency around what we're consuming and using, but also the financial pieces to make sure that, you know, we're being responsible from an operations or business consumption. And, you know, for us, that's really started, and we've really seen iterations and momentum being built by having that top-down support around that. And so, you know, with the change of leadership, this latest iteration, you know, we've set our outcome with a vision. And sorry, I'm going to read it because I don't want to get it correct, because it's really important for our businesses to eliminate the reliance on BCLC's technology infrastructure to build and operate cloud native platforms of the future. So we've really had to spend a lot of time with our senior leadership to just make sure that we're aligned on what that vision is. And for us, that's cloud first, right? And we've done a number of pieces below that to just put in the proper frameworks and processes so that when we work with our business partners, you know, they can realize the different and highest value products that cloud has to offer.
So I just heard you've been on this journey for 8 years, right? Since 2016, you mentioned. So clearly, you've learned a lot. I'm curious to know, what challenges have you faced in getting your IT teams to start thinking in a cloud-first way as part of sort of their day-to-day operations? What were those challenges, and maybe what may have been the biggest obstacles you faced?
Sure, definitely can weigh in on that. And Mackenzie, we've had this conversation offline many times, and even, you know, as frequently as yesterday. So when we take a look at, you know, the focus on our people, our IT folks, right? It always seems like we have this history. So it's like we have well-established processes. Why are we going to change that? Why would we want to go down that path? You know, and you get a lot of comments around that fear. And so, you know, when we focus on that as a leadership around the cloud and just leadership in general within the IT, you know, we've had open and honest communications with our people. We want to have that back and forth conversation, but be honest where we're going, where we're headed, and what we need people to come along for the journey on, right? So, you know, not too humble to say that continues today. We have those open lines of communication still. There's questions that come up in an anonymous platform, right? Where our leadership takes the time to answer those questions, right? Because we really need our people to buy in. And not only have we done the communications piece, but we've also done and reassured our people that we need them and that we're going to invest and upskill them so that cloud delivery becomes just a part of their every day-to-day operations. So we've worked with and put out, you know, and asking our people like, well, where do you think that training is? We've done different surveys so that people can take and build their own pathways. And then we've taken all of that piece of those feedback from at an individual level and created formal training plans, right? We really want to show that we're invested in our people and that we're going to continue to do that as we move forward. And I think the final piece around, you know, that onboard, getting people bought in is just letting people be able to play. So a part of my budget includes a sandbox area where we're interested, people have the opportunity to go in, play with the services, knowing that it's not going to impact any of our business outcomes or revenue streams, and just give them a place where they can play and learn on their own.
I love hearing it. It's all about people. It's all about people, what I'm hearing back, Craig, right?
Yeah, nothing gets done by one individual or person or a leadership group, right? So it takes everybody moving in the right direction to really see the velocity and to get the value out of what we're trying to do here within our organization. I'm sure that's, you know, similar for everybody else. People are at the core of what we do and how we, you know, provide solutions to our customers, provide that value.
I love it.
Yeah.
So
Well, go
what I
ahead.
heard you said, the way you approached it is engage with people, make sure that the people understand that they will have a role, then invest in people so that they can actually get the skills they need to be successful operating cloud environments, and also make sure people learn through play.
Correct.
Segment spaces where they can safely experiment and learn. So those are the three pillars I just heard you mention on how to actually get people to buy in and lean in to this cloud environment. Very, very cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and Dalibor, the one comment I'd add on to everything that Craig said, I think, Craig, you and the team have done a fantastic job at bringing people along and communicating that. And I would say that's one of the most critical success factors for any operating model is having a very structured communication and investment in training and play, as you say, as a part of that organization. One thing I didn't mention in my bio, I'm based here in Winnipeg, and in Manitoba, as in many other jurisdictions in the country, we face the additional challenge of an aging IT workforce, of a workforce that has many different organizations have folks that are going to be retiring from IT in the next 3 to 5 years. And in many cases, there's a big resistance to shifting not only the technology and what they use, but also building the skill sets and changing the mindset to a product-based, agile-based mindset, right? And so, having lots of communication, structured messaging around why are we doing this, what value are we going to get, allowing for those areas of play and exploration. It's critical to get all the range of different folks that you might need in your organization on board for any op model change to be successful. So I think what Craig's outlined, I think you've shown a really great example of how you can do that within an organization. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we all know, and you actually mentioned this at the beginning, that one of the primary drivers for organizations to actually leverage cloud is to become more agile, more responsive, more elastic. So Craig, to what extent has your organization started down this agile product-based delivery path?
So actually, it's interesting, in the same sort of time period where we were looking at automation, where we were looking at cloud, we were also looking at agile as a delivery model at BCLC. So interestingly enough, we adopted that model in 2018, so 2018.
Okay.
As of today, we actually have 41 agile teams for delivery. And of that, less than 50%, 19 of them are actually owned by our IT organization. So it's a pretty interesting breakup that it's not all coming from IT. We have it and we see it across the organization. Our cloud teams, so our initial cloud team, when we started and had a dedicated team, was an early adopter of this. And actually I was the leader of that team at the time. And we were team number 2 in the organization to formally adopt Agile as our delivery methodology. And as it sits today, 4 of the 19 IT teams actually sit within our hosting area. So 2 of them are focused on building out our cloud platforms with our hyperscalers, and the other 2 are dedicated teams to the data center delivery pieces. And this just allows us to be able to scale and deliver velocity to meet the growing demands of our business and our partners.
So what we also know is that there is a rebirth, if you wish, of the realization of a need to create an engineering culture within IT organizations, an engineering culture, a culture that is going to focus on making sure that those kind of experts feel welcome and enabled to be at their best, with strong automation and DevOps and DevSecOps and cloud roots. Those are really critical capabilities these days to run a successful modern IT organization, which will, of course, include cloud workloads. So to what degree is your cloud operating model helping really facilitate this type of culture being evident at BCLC, Craig?
Sure. So we've already sort of spoken that we had a number of strategic pillars that got brought on board. And one of them was clearly automation within our IT department. And that team, was focused on increasing our velocity through development and DevOps practices and building the frameworks and the tools for the teams, right, to leverage and get those push button deployments and experiences. As we brought on the cloud teams too and dedicated that time, we actually seen a lot of synergies around, that development style. So our team actually is built cross-functionally, where we have subject matter experts from across the organization. And we've incorporated a lot of the different DevOps practices and frameworks just around our delivery, right? At the end of the day, we want to be able to deploy quickly, and bringing on these cloud platform teams focused on and dedicated to that, we've really been able to enable our non-technical customers to deploy at scale with our cloud solutions. It's just it's interesting that it's confirmed our journey or the iterations that we've taken to just make cloud another mechanism on how IT provides end customer value.
Yeah. I wonder now, 8 years into the journey of cloud operating model, cloud transformation, 6 years into the journey of agile team, how do you measure impact? How do you measure success of adopting these new operating models, these new concepts, Craig?
For sure. We have a number. And so it's really important for us to show that progress and that adoption within our organization around how we're actually delivering, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for us, it's important to be able to report and visually show, the adoption as it is by line of business. So our revenue generating products, being able
Mm-hmm.
to show that, and then, also include the different consumption and service delivery models that make up that. So Mackenzie, you referenced this earlier around software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, right? So we track all of that and how we're doing in progress and adopting the different technologies. And then ultimately, where or how much of our user base is actually working in the cloud on our hosted solutions every day. So it's one area that we really focus on, and to just show the progress around cloud and how we're delivering IT or services back to the organization. The second one is just around understanding our governance and compliance, right? So we've created a framework where we're transparently showing our security and compliance scores, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody can take a look in, and there's no hiding the facts of where we're at, and we're always trying to progress in those. And keeping a tab on the number of solutions that are actually aligned to that cloud first strategy. So, how many requests are we getting for new services? And how many of those, are not being deployed in that cloud first strategy. So we have an idea of where we're moving and how many different workloads we're using. And then finally for us, it's an annual status commitment to the cloud maturity model and industry assessment. So we want to know, where do we sit within, cloud within, anybody that's deploying it. So how do we sit? Where are we at? And where are our opportunities to improve? And then finally, one of our drivers is optimizing our costs. So, it's really important for us to be able to show back what we're doing with the intent of actually going to a chargeback model. So, we want to have complete financial transparency on where we're consuming and where that is within the enterprise. And then, being able to leverage and use that data to help support funding or business opportunities so we can understand what our operational expenses are going to be.
So it sounds like you have a pretty comprehensive value measurement and reporting kind of model around this. You have mentioned 4 or 5 different elements that communicate value, which is quite impressive. Thank you very much for that, Craig. Mac, you mentioned you've been at Deloitte for 12 years working with different clients at different stages of maturity. What does good look like here for an organization that's deciding to move down this path?
Absolutely. I think there's a couple of really key tenets of an organization that is in a really good shape when it comes to their cloud operating model. And I compliment Craig, because I think a lot of those key tenets he's talking about as have already put in place at BCLC as an example. And I think there's lots to learn from what he's shared already. But I think here are some of the things that would stand out in my mind. The first one is an alignment on the why are we moving to cloud? What are you trying to achieve? What benefits and outcomes are you trying to achieve by using cloud? If you're looking for a benefit of simply getting out of your data center and into a different data center, the types of roles and skill sets and capabilities and processes you need is very different than if you're trying to build net new cloud native technologies that push the boundary of technology adoption for a business unit. So having very clear alignment on that is critical. A second critical piece is ownership, very clear ownership over different stacks, different levels of the stack of technology between various different teams. So the business should have some ownership over the technology they use, but what level of autonomy do they have to make decisions over certain aspects of the technology stack? What does the cloud, is there a dedicated centralized cloud team, or is cloud competency federated across IT? If there's a centralized cloud team, what do they have the right to make decisions about versus the rest of the organization? Can they put a stop to something that's going to be a lot of value to the business because it represents a big security risk? Or are they just simply an arbiter saying, let's go to the executive and say, this is a big security risk, but it's going to provide a lot of value. You guys decide whether this is up for debate or not, right? So organizations that have this good have a very clear ownership structure and everyone understands it. Conversely, I've seen some organizations where there isn't that clarity of ownership. And in one particular example, this organization had a very clear disagreement about what was owned by the data team and what was owned by the cloud team. The data team was using databases, data warehouses, lakes, oceans, whatever you want to call it, on the cloud-based environment, and felt they had the right to make any kind of decisions, where the cloud team was saying, no, everything that's deployed within the cloud environment is our purview and we have the right to make decisions. Well, getting time to value of new data solutions was always a very painful process because there was disagreement back and forth about what should be done and what solutions were allowed and what weren't, right? So if you don't have that in place and a good structure for, and clarity and buy-in on what those different elements are, that can be very difficult. And then the final piece is what everything that Craig was just alluding to, really measuring your success and evaluating across those. So clear set of metrics that tie back to those business outcomes we first talked about, that you're measuring, reporting on, and incrementally improving on over time. If you're not measuring the success, then you don't know whether what you've done is valuable or not. And so I think that's another really key representative of what good can really look like. And then finally, and this question came up in the Q&A as well, having buy-in at different levels. So having buy-in from the IT organization, as Craig alluded to, proper training, investment, allowing for innovation and play, but also buy-in from other organizations that are affected by cloud adoption. So I've worked with multiple different clients on educating different executives on what are the impacts of cloud outside of IT. Some of the key areas that are often affected, first of all, finance, very easy. Cloud costs represent normally, for the most part, operating expenses versus traditional IT capital expenditures. Yep. And having the finance team on board for that transition is really important. Legal and procurement's another critical area. If you can't quickly procure new cloud solutions, you can't get time to value. And cloud, especially infrastructure hyperscaler providers, have a very different liability structure than traditional IT products. And having the procurement team bought into the fact that the organization is going to take on a certain amount of responsibility and risk by adopting these platforms, but get the benefit of a commodity pay-per-use, low-cost capability is really important to not hang up the process or cause undue issues. And finally, HR is a big impact as well, as there's new roles, skill sets, especially in unionized environments, different job titles, different job descriptions, use of external third-party skill sets versus internal skill sets, and where that looks like. That can be a major issue for organizations if the HR department is not on board for what those changes might represent from an op model perspective. So those would be my key answers, Dalibor. It's really, the vision, the measurement, the ownership, and the buy-in. And if you have those things in place, then you are set to accelerate the value from your cloud investment.
What I really like about what you just said about these stakeholder buy-in, I think that actually really is important to summarize and repeat. So in addition to, of course, having the IT teams understand the value of moving into the cloud for the right reasons, and we mentioned the first step is being clear about why you want to do this and being clear about the purpose of moving into cloud. But what is really important, you said, you need to have finance on board because of the different way cloud expenses can be treated, and understanding the impact it will have on the overall organizational financial planning, budgeting, costing. That is really critical to have finance on board and understanding. And then you mentioned legal, having legal on board and understanding, because the liabilities are different. What your cloud providers will accept will be different from perhaps smaller boutique firms, right, in terms of risk. But then you mentioned procurement as a third critical element that needs to have a buy-in because of the specifics of how to actually procure cloud solutions. And lastly, HR. So these are the five fingers of the hand, essentially. Have the IT, finance, HR, procurement, and legal, and everybody needs to be engaged and understand the implications. That is really, I think, really good advice.
If you don't mind, Dalibor, just say that it's bang on, and even within our own organization, we've spent a lot of time with our partners across the different divisions to address exactly those needs, right? So procurement, being able to quickly be able to light up the services and leverage and use them, right? To see that value investment, that has really helped us. It's been one critical part of being able to get to that value quicker when we look at that, the delivery chains and the different models that we're looking at.
Yeah. So. And as a matter of fact, I was just going to go there. So there is a buy-in of these enabling functions, but then, of course, adopting this cloud technology also will trigger or spark a change in the way the business thinks about and leverages technology, right? So have you, Craig, sensed a shift in the way the business is thinking about technology now that they're cloud enabled, or more with that cloud enablement?
Absolutely. So we've definitely noticed, that accelerated delivery piece. So we just kind of spoke on it. I'll just, having the question beforehand, Mackenzie, I've been able to pull some of our metrics for the last year. So, over the last 12 months or so, we've onboarded 8 net new customers, right? So customers across the division, different business units, and provided 20 different business environments and deployed over 100 different technical services and solutions native to the cloud. So, we've really seen that accelerate and enable our customers to decide the tools and the structures that they want without having to engage in complex conversations with IT. So now our customers and our stakeholders, now they focus on the outcome that they're trying to achieve, and does an off-the-shelf or already patterned solution meet their needs?
And now,
I think
go ahead, Mick.
I think kind of to add on that, there's a question from Gordon in the chat around, is the move of good to excellent around no longer having to spend substantial time focusing on cloud operational needs, and rather focus on issues that are articulated for stakeholders or investors' annual report. And this is exactly the example. Once you've put in place the strong structure, I don't want to say solved, because things evolve over time, and not model evolves over time, but once you have a structure in place that's working, effective, it's gone through performing, storming, norming, and it's got to performing, right? Then you get to this acceleration, right? You get to these pieces where the business can come and say, hey, can we use Gen AI to do this thing? Or could we use this, can we start using sensor data to optimize our manufacturing? Or can we start, thinking outside the box in the use of these technologies? And they're coming to IT to say, what can we do with technology to improve the way we deliver value to our shareholders, stakeholders, citizens, what have you, whatever type of business it is. And that's really the golden ideal of where you get to with a good cloud operating model, is that you automate and structure all away the barriers to using new technology. You make it a safe and secure structure that has plenty of automation and other elements. And then you get to the point where I can just come and say, hey, I want to try out this new technology to see if it can change the way that I deliver business value. And Craig spread a great example of now he's been able to do that for multiple different customers. And I think the last thing I'll say, kind of with a comment to that, is I just love the fact even that he refers to his business stakeholders as his customers. One of the tenets of a cloud op model is turning IT to run like a business for the business.
Yeah.
And so thinking as customers, as I'm delivering a service for someone, I have expectations around service levels, all the things that have been good practice in IT and ITIL Foundation and other things for decades, but really putting them into, a spotlight in practice by delivering these cloud solutions. And then to your point, Dalibor, getting the business ready for the fact that at a certain point, they're starting to make decisions that affect the budget and affect the consumption of the organization. So they're going to start to take on the cost of that. It's no longer going to just be dump everything into an IT cost center and a whole bunch of capital and that's it. All of a sudden, how much the business uses technology will start to become an operational expense for them. And IT will cover the costs of the overall model, but not the individual subsets. A good analogy I liken to this is thinking of the different business services and applications of different business units as stores within a mall complex. IT sets up the mall complex. They set up the security, the plumbing, the hydro, the electricity of the entire mall structure, and they build the structure of the rooms for individual stores. But the business units then get the freedom to come and say, hey, I want a Gen AI in my store. I want a sensor data in my store, and I want to set it up in this way and play around and change the configuration myself. And they start to pay for the costs of running the elements that are within that store and their proportion of electricity and consumption of the entire mall. But that mall and how, an external attacker getting into that mall is secured by the mall provider itself rather than the individual stores within. Although they still have the responsibility for the doors into the store itself and putting locks and things in those areas, right? So it's kind of a good way to think about it, because once you can get to the point where you can say, hey, do whatever you want in your store, we'll help you set it up and get it up and running, but it's running within the secure, well-structured environment, then the sky's the limit of what you can start to build into your building complex.
I love the mall metaphor. It's actually, I love it. It's really helpful to think of it from that perspective.
I'm thinking the same thing, Dalibor. I'm stealing that, Mackenzie.
Yeah, please.
That's a good one,
That's
isn't
a
it?
really
That's an
good
excellent
way
one.
of explaining how things are.
Yeah. So Craig, I want to build on the question. You mentioned how your cloud operating model, we just discussed this, it creates like this store where the business can go and do custom things that they need to do, but in the broader context of the mall that provides electricity, safety, security, and all the other stuff. But how has adopting cloud operating model helped your organization accelerate other areas of transformation in technology, Craig?
Definitely. We see this actually all the time, and anybody that's worked in technology for any number of years knows that it gets disruptive and things change very quickly. So there's many technologies outside of the box or on the platforms that are really interesting for our business. But maybe I'll pick two, and I hope they're relevant, to the users and the people that we have on the call today. So for BCLC, one of the areas that we're corporately focusing on is advanced analytics. So we're really focused and heavily focused on being data literate, right? And so we've invested a lot of resources and teams, right, to drive this from a corporate perspective and focusing on the strategies that leverage our data and our technology to become differentiators for our customers and their experiences, right? So we start looking at like the outcomes that we're looking for, and the questions that comes up with that is, how can we tailor each customer's experience to be unique for their needs? Or, how do we ensure our products aren't introducing any harmful behaviors, right? So, and I have a quote from our CEO, Pat Davis, which I think sums up where we're focusing on analytics at BCLC is, he says, we're data rich and insight poor, right? So it's really, we see that as being a key contributor to the success of our organization as we go forward and offering our customers, a better experience when they come to BCLC. The second one, AI, or artificial intelligence. It's everywhere. It's been definitely one of the hot topics recently. And so again, I'll be honest, at BCLC, we don't know how we're going to use it yet, but what we're looking to use AI for is to add that layer and bring clarity to some of those analytic processes, right? So I think that there's an opportunity to gain insight, right? So that first question around like unique to needs is, how do we make those experiences using AI meaningful for our customers? Or how do we proactively see unusual behavior or play from our players that, you know, could lead them down a path of harm? So for BCLC, I think, you know, hopefully relevant to the base that we have here with us today, but those are two areas definitely that we see, you know, disrupting what we're already doing and adding to our cloud.
So what I'm hearing you say effectively is that to the same degree that business gets transformed when they get access to cloud solutions and opportunities to actually work in this more agile subscription model, business benefits, but also other technologies will benefit from strong cloud operating models deployed. You mentioned better ability to do insights and analytics, perhaps a quicker way to figure out how to leverage artificial intelligence capabilities, and so on and so forth. So it works on multiple grounds. Mac, we already spoke about, we touched a little bit on the engineering culture.
Yeah.
That is important to, you know, to bring this to life. What will be the key components of that culture that should be in place to support organization as it moves into the cloud?
Absolutely. You know, I think we've talked about a lot of these elements already throughout the conversation today, but I think it's really reinforcing a couple of things, right? So the two things really in my mind. So the first one is, in order to get to that you know, ideal golden state of allowing for that freedom of business users to start to use this technology, you need to remove as many what I call menial barriers as possible. That means embedding an automation culture into the start and really aggressively pursuing automation. And it actually sounds anathema because on the one hand, you want to allow for freedom and customization, but on the other hand, you want to automate as much as possible. But it's choosing what you automate and how you automate it, and driving towards that. And we can use our mall example, you know, in an interesting way, right? So one thing would be, you know, you're building these different stores, you have some architectural blueprints and patterns for standard store layouts, and you have some automation around some of the standard things every store is going to need, whether that's a cash register, you know, flooring, you know, seats for customers, having a standard approach to those different things that a customer can come in and deploy those and know that they have a pattern and infrastructure as code that can put those down. You know, from a cloud perspective, that would be, you know, patterns for virtual machines or containerization or different database structures, right? And then allow the configuration and customization to happen at the application layer, which is where it actually serves those business customers, the flow pattern in the store and what goods you're selling and all those different types of pieces, right? So by removing as many of those barriers as possible to standing up those elements, you can enable the most amount of automation going forward. And then the second piece, which again, we've talked about a number of different times, is embedding a culture of allowing for continuous improvement. Sometimes this is known as like allowing for failure. In many organizations, especially public sector organizations, as Craig can probably attest, saying something is a failure is very difficult to put through to the executive.
Yep.
But if you can build structures that allow for testing and improvement and saying this, you know, we should adjust the timeline along the way, and rather than being a failure, it's something, a roadblock on the path to success. And really change the mindset to allow for that, but have the appropriate governance structure and safeguards around to allow that to happen safely and know how to do that safely. Those are the two real engineering kind of cultural mindsets that I think are most important for organizations to get the best value out of this.
Right.
So part of that automation is, again, you know, simple things like, you know, building a structured landing zone for your infrastructure hyperscaler environment that has global policies for any account within that hyperscaler that prevents bad security decisions, you know, enforces two-factor authentication to the account, reduces the number of publicly facing IP addresses. You know, I'm going a bit technical, but, you know, just basic things that are the you know, what 80% of you know, threats are looking for. And if you can just take those off the table by automating policies that make it impossible for anyone to do those things incorrectly, then you're looking for those 20% of things that are unique to the application rather than having to worry about 100% every single time. So that's really what it's about.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you for that, Mac. So Craig, I want to come back to you. Given you and your team have been on this journey for a while, I want to ask you about, like, looking forward a little bit. Emerging technologies are hitting us regularly, and it seems like the velocity of innovation is, of course, increasing. What are some of those emerging technologies or tech trends that your organization has already been incorporating in your operating?
Right, so I think we really spoke to that just when we were looking at, where are we going? What are we trying to focus on? Definitely, there are a number of different things. So I think Mackenzie hit a few, right? Which is using containerization and software as a service to be able to do that. So we're looking at solutions where, is it in our best interest to purchase and buy off the shelf, or is this something that's core to our business, right?
Mhm.
And so taking and trying to split that commodity piece towards build versus buy, and then creating those experiences for our customers. So I think there's a lot of product suites that are out there. I mentioned the analytics and the artificial intelligence. I think was where we see BCLC having to invest in to be successful around that personalization and being able to individualize the people that we use. To Mackenzie's point, maybe getting a little technical, but the different like Rosa from AWS and using like containerization where it's not infrastructure as a service, it's more of a software as a service solution. So we divest ourselves of having to do all the operational pieces and work on that, right? And then looking at how do we refactor some of the products that we already have, right? So as a well-established company, we have patterns and blueprints that have been around for quite some time. So it's how do we take or look at the different technologies that are at our fingertips now to quickly test and see whether they fit our operating models, and can we just incorporate those into the solutions that we already have? And obviously then being aligned with our business to just make sure that wherever the pathways that we go are actually achieving the outcomes that our business is looking at, and really reinforce us as being, an enabler and a partner for the different areas of our business.
To what degree would you now say cloud approach is important or integral to your overall IT strategy, Craig?
I would say it's core to how we will host and conduct business. We've already spent a lot of time and effort getting, our C-suite level and down with the top-down support around being cloud first. We've put in the frameworks and worked on policies and standards to be able to align, our solutions to those strategies. And, finally, what I'll show is how real this is for BCLC is as we speak today, we are 48 hours into bringing online a core revenue generating line of business that's fully hosted on cloud services and technologies. So to our knowledge anyway, and we haven't validated this with AWS, but we're the first jurisdiction in North America to host a centralized gaming system on AWS.
So just by mentioning that, it is evident that this is not just core of IT strategy, but core to the enterprise's strategy, right? It's a business revenue generating business enabler now, right, Craig?
Yeah, and I just say that we're looking at how do we do the same transformation for the other lines of business that we have, and how can we show some leadership and be that partner there in making decisions around, what our delivery models are going to look like when it comes to our other lines of business and our other revenue generating systems.
Mac, I have a question that came from the audience about small and medium businesses in Canada. Small and medium businesses are the core of Canadian economy. Like most of Canadian economy actually are small and medium businesses. Can you maybe comment on what are some inhibitors to adoption of cloud for small and medium businesses in Canada?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in some ways small and medium businesses have a better opportunity to adopt cloud than large organizations. But I do think that small and medium businesses oftentimes, or sometimes at least, don't think about putting more structured operating models in place because they think they're not big enough to warrant the, kind of the attention on those different elements. And kind of looking at the question, one of the things is, can we learn from large enterprises that are going down this pathway? And I think there's absolutely an opportunity to do so. And in some ways, there's an opportunity for small to medium businesses to be leaders in these different areas, because what's the advantage of an SMB is oftentimes they don't face the same technical debt and history that a larger organization that's been in business for a long time faces. And that technical debt is the technology itself, but it's also the embedded processes, procedures, ownership, governance, all these other elements that are designed in a very specific way that have to be rewritten with the introduction of cloud. And for small and medium businesses who don't have that long history, there's an opportunity to make some of those adjustments from the bat and not have to reevaluate those things and get the same level of buy-in. I think for all organizations, so continuing with SMBs, one thing that oftentimes trips up is when they see kind of models that we as Deloitte would produce as an example, looking at the people as an example, we have a list of about 25 to 30 different roles that an organization should have to run their cloud operations effectively. An SMB looks at that and says, I don't have budget for 25 people. My IT department is 5 people big as it is. And that's being generous with some of these organizations. And so we don't need all of that, but I think it comes down to the difference between a role and a position. We're not saying you need 25 people. We're saying you need people with these 25 skill sets. And that could be 1 or 2 people who do a ton of work and training to get upskilled to the level, and then supplement the rest with professional services or contractors or whatever you need in order to, before you get to the level of operations that you're looking at, or even cloud as a managed service, right? So there's multiple different ways to look at it. And if you put together a proper operating model strategy for where you want to be in delivering IT in that organization, any organization can benefit from thinking about this in a structured way and moving forward. What I think is more interesting is there's a lot for both large and small to medium businesses to learn from technology organizations that have been living these engineering and product cultures for a very, very long time. And many organizations will look at the Netflixes, the X's, the Metas of the world and say, that doesn't really apply to me. That technology is their only source of revenue and income, and it's only there. But those are the organizations where you can learn a lot of these lessons and apply a lot of these elements. And when we develop our cloud operating models, we say, that's what level 5 of 1 to 5 maturity looks like. If you decide you want to achieve level 3, you don't have to get to level 5, but you can learn the lessons from level 5 and apply at a level 3 rating to get the benefits that you're looking to drive from a cloud operating model. So I do think SMBs can learn from large organizations, but I think all organizations can learn from the most advanced technology organizations and how they structure their IT department as lessons for how to continuously improve their own operations and take more advantage of technology as a strategic driver of business success.
Thank you very much for that. And so the last question that I wanted to ask is, both of you gentlemen have been obviously in this business for a long time. What are some emerging best practices that you may have observed? I'd love to hear from both of you. So maybe we can start with you, Mac, and then Craig, please add some salt and pepper.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the number one best practice in my point of view is just start. Just consider this something really important, that in order to be able to really adopt cloud effectively, you need to have the structure in place. I've seen a few organizations recently who are thinking of cloud only as that extra data center alone. And so they haven't invested in these areas and they're facing some of these challenges, right? But for me, just thinking about cloud as an integral part, understanding that it's a model that requires a change in the way that you deliver, and then adding these different engineering culture and product-based practices that we've been talking about, that's really, the summary of how I would drive to success in these different areas.
Yeah,
thank you, Craig.
And maybe I'll add just a little bit more of a technical flavor to that, right? Is, where you see patterns exist, right? We've referenced it a number of times, like automation is your friend there. It reduces the overhead, the time that people need to focus on it, and you get a consistent result all the time, right? Because you're not manually intervening with that. So it's, it creates that operational efficiency. It also gives, the ability to continue to build on what you've already defined, at a grassroots level. And then if you see those patterns, you can expand on top of those. That's one. And then, you know, just be clear on what the definition of ready to go is, right? So like, what are you trying to achieve? What is the outcome you're looking for? And then the opposite, how do you know when you're done, right? What does that definition of done look like? So what are the expectations that you have when you have these engineering teams or these structures? And what is that expectation level of to consider something complete?
Fantastic. Thank you very much, both. The only thing that I would add is actually your comment from earlier, Craig, around people, enablement of people, investment of people, and encouragement of people to safely experiment. This was fantastic. We are right on time, so I want to thank you very much for your time. I'll be respectful of the hour that we booked. So Mac and Craig, thank you so very much. And for our audiences, the session has been recorded. So very soon I'm going to be sharing it on both LinkedIn and YouTube. Thank you very much for your time, and have yourself a wonderful and lovely Tuesday afternoon. All the very best. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.